All right, today we're diving into a real medical puzzle. How does something as natural as pregnancy sometimes flip a switch and trigger a complex disease? We're going to be looking for a clue, one that's hiding in plain sight, right in the blood.
I mean, think about it. Pregnancy is this totally normal physiological state. So why on earth does it sometimes cause a condition like diabetes to just pop up? It's a question that has really puzzled researchers for a long time, but it seems the answer might get its start with the placenta.
So it all seems to kick off with the placenta. This amazing organ is, of course, absolutely critical for the baby, but it also just floods the body with a whole new cocktail of hormones. And the thing is, those hormones can sometimes cause insulin resistance, which makes it much, much harder for the mother's body to manage blood sugar. That's really the paradox at the heart of this whole thing.
But what if there was a clue? You know, a specific chemical trail that could lead us straight to the source of the problem? Well, some researchers in Turkey had exactly that hunch, and they started following a lead, a kind of chemical suspect hiding deep inside the blood.
All right, let's meet our main person of interest. It's called tryptophan. You've probably heard of it. It's an essential amino acid, one of those fundamental building blocks we have to get from our food. Our bodies use it for all sorts of important stuff, like making proteins and even neurotransmitters like serotonin. But it turns out, most of it goes somewhere else entirely.
You see, tryptophan doesn't just hang around. The vast majority of it gets processed through something called the kynurenine pathway. Now, the easiest way to picture this is to think of it like a factory assembly line. It takes the raw material, tryptophan, and starts breaking it down to turn it into other useful things. And the process is pretty straightforward. First, tryptophan enters this pathway. Then, it's converted into another molecule called kynurenine. We'll just call it KYN for short. And from there, KYN gets processed even further into other compounds the body needs. This whole pathway, this is our potential scene of the crime. And this is where the researchers had their big aha moment. They already knew that this kynurenine pathway tends to go into overdrive in other conditions, like type 2 diabetes. So they asked a really smart question. Could the exact same thing be happening in gestational diabetes? Was this whole metabolic assembly line just running way too fast? So, to test that idea, they had to set up their own investigation. You can think of it like a chemical lineup, designed to see if the activity of this pathway was truly out of whack in patients with GDM. And their setup was actually pretty elegant. They got 50 patients who had gestational diabetes and compared them directly against 50 healthy pregnant individuals. The real magic, though, was the technology they used, something called liquid chromatography tandem mass spectroscopy. It's a mouthful, I know, but it basically allowed them to take a super detailed chemical snapshot, precisely measuring the levels of tryptophan and all of its byproducts for every single person. And when they put all that data together, well, you can probably guess what happened. A really clear pattern just jumped right out. They found a distinct chemical fingerprint that perfectly separated the GDM patients from the healthy group. This was the big breakthrough.
Here's the core finding, and it couldn't be clearer. In the patients with gestational diabetes, their tryptophan levels were way down. Now, this wasn't because they were eating less of it. Nope. It was because that kynurenine pathway, our metabolic assembly line, was running in complete overdrive, just burning through its raw material way faster than normal. And you can really see that imbalance visually right here. On one hand, you've got low levels of the raw material, tryptophan. On the other hand, you have the activity of the pathway itself cranked way, way up. Now let's look at the hard data.
Okay, so here's the fingerprint itself. You can see tryptophan is significantly lower, while kynurenine, that first product off the assembly line, is higher. Now, I want you to look at that last column, the p-value. In science, anything below 0.05 is a pretty big deal. It means what you're seeing isn't just a random fluke. And these values, most of them are less than 0.001. That is incredibly strong. This isn't just a hint. This is the investigation's smoking gun. So, we've found our culprit, an overactive pathway. Case closed, right? Well, not quite. The really important question is, what does cracking this piece of the code actually mean for doctors and patients in the real world?
Well, the implications are actually huge. First, it gives us a much deeper insight into the biology of what's going on. But the practical side is even more exciting. This chemical signature is something you can actually measure. It could be the foundation for totally new diagnostic tools, maybe supplementary blood tests to help confirm a diagnosis, or even to monitor how a patient is responding to care over time.
And you don't have to take my word for it. The researchers themselves concluded in their own words that these tests could be used to assist in diagnosis and patient follow-up. It's a direct path from the lab to the clinic. It's kind of amazing to think that this whole story started with a single amino acid and a metabolic pathway that was just working a little too hard. But that one simple finding has given us a powerful new clue in this whole puzzle. And it leaves us with a really compelling thought. Could this tiny chemical trail once hidden away in the blood be one of the keys to unlocking a safer future for prenatal care?